Hello everybody, I'm Claire and welcome to my video blog. Right, well I think I'll just go straight into this one because I've just had what when I was young, back in the 70s, we used to call a really heavy scene. And in fact I had a bit of a heavy scene on New Year's Day, so I'll just warm you up with that one, but the one I had this afternoon was considerably heavier. And yeah, I'm kind of getting a bit annoyed with these people now. The one on New Year's Day, I went to an all-day house party, very pleasant, and knew lots of people there. And really, just towards the end, I should have left. I only had one glass of wine, and that was really early on, so that had worn off. But I should have left before a relative of the hosts sat down, and I was already talking to a quite interesting Irish chap who had engaged me, and he had drawn me into talking about Brexit, but it was, you know, quite friendly, and in fact it turned out he had voted Brexit himself, because I don't know how this works, but he had voting rights here with it, so okay. I know that Ireland and Britain have kind of interesting constitutional arrangements, don't we? Anyway, the relative of the hosts came in and picked up on the conversation, and it was really quite unpleasant. I mean, you really don't expect on a kind of good-natured New Year's Day house party for people to be getting aggressive with you. I don't mind people saying, oh, well, you know, I was a bit disappointed, you know, and blah blah blah, but when they start on you like, really, you know, if we're lucky Parliament will turn this nonsense over and we'll still be in the EU. Oh, hang on just a minute, hang on, excuse me, oh, Parliament is sovereign, it can and so I had to get in his face a little bit, because I was just about to leave. I thought, I just can't sit here and take this nonsense from this guy, and he's a relative. It's on home turf. There's nothing I can do about it. He's late. The party's thinning out. Time for me to go home. So I got up and left. And just as I was leaving, he made some smart aleck remark at me. So I came back right in his face. I said, look, mate, you can have your opinion. I don't mind. And I'll have my opinion. But you don't snidey remark people as they're leaving the room so that you can have the last laugh that you've dug at me, because really, of course, this is somebody who's a bit of a sore loser. Now anyway, so that annoyed me a bit. I was going to do something, I was going to do a video blog about that, but anyway, we've got it over in 3 minutes flat, because today I had a much heavier scene, and it lasted a much shorter space of time, actually. I had mentioned to some of my friends that I would be going to see my MP, Rachel Reeves, Leeds West, today. I wanted to speak to her about Brexit, and I also wanted to tack a few other subjects along with it, which went in its train. And really, she was, well, even from the start I found her most disdainful, because I said, well, you know, I wanted to know that, you know, what the situation was, and would we finally get the Brexit through. And she was saying, well, yes, Parliament has voted for it in December. And I'm saying, yeah, but I keep hearing these attempts to stymie it. And she says, oh, well, that's just parliamentary democracy. So I said, right, so yeah, you're telling me that it will go through, we will have a proper Brexit. Yes, almost like, why are you wasting my time? It's like, well, I just happen to be one of her constituents, and if she wants to say to me something like, oh yes, now don't you worry, yes, I can understand why somebody like you might be feeling a bit worried with all these legal things, but, you know, let me reassure you it will go through, and it, you know, I'm supporting it myself, because she herself, at the time of the Labour Party conference in September, she said this must go through, and I was quite encouraged by that. But anyway, we'd kind of got through this bit of the conversation in about, you know, a couple of minutes, really, and she's really she's not, kind of like, can I help you? What can I do? What, let's talk about this. It's very much like, get on, move on with it, And I'm thinking, and of course, we had a little bit of history because a year ago, I went to see her about the trolleybus, and because we were very concerned that it was going to be a complete financial disaster for the city of Leeds. So I went there and I had documents from the Professor of Transport Studies, who had spoken at the inquiry, and she rebuffed me. She said, it's none of my business, it's not my constituency, and I can't... Anyway, I think it's a good scheme because the head of the council has, endorsed it, and, the fact that I'm on the Select Financial Committee, I'm not going to get involved and say to the government, oh, you need to give a little bit more scrutiny to this. That's all I was asking, just that she would maybe, want to get a bit of more scrutiny on something that could set the city of Leeds back hundreds of millions over decades, nasty business. So anyway, that, can't remember, it was about the beginning of May or end of April last year, the inquiry result came out, fully endorsed the views of Professor Peter Bonsall, that it was a planning disaster and a really bad business plan. So obviously I was really pleased. I've mentioned that once or twice, quite a minor thing in the scheme of things, but we're very, very happy about it here in North Leeds, and I think they are in Hunslet as well, where it would have also destroyed at least one community. And anyway, so this is the backdrop of me going to see my MP Reeves today, because she had rebuffed me almost exactly a year ago when I went back in January last year, and I'd said, look, this is a really serious thing. I've got this, I've got this paper, this recommendation, this analysis. Professor Bonsall's been pursuing this ever since the inquiry. It's, another year of what was it, evidence? Well, maybe not another year, but several months more. And he'd worked up, and the evidence was, well, he was putting it in a particular way, and I had these papers from him, and well, golly, blow me, the government agreed with him. So there is this backdrop of when I went to see my MP, that she knows she rebuffed me a year ago when I had I wanted to put this to her, and yet here we are a year later, and in the meantime I was proved right, and as was Professor Bonsall. So it wasn't just that she thought it was outside her constituency. She said, oh, I trust the chief executive and all this. So I'll get the chief executive to write you a letter. So the chief executive wrote me a letter, and nobody from his office had actually attended the public inquiry, so I was aware, neither any of the councillors who supported it. Anyway, enough of that. So we're back in the little room in the Armley Library today, and so she says, well, come on with it, stop wasting my time. Well, she didn't actually say that, but she might as well have, and I've just got over a really bad flu, so I'm a bit slow, and so I'm saying, well, the thing is, I'm very concerned about these demographic movements with the EU, and that whether, when we get out of the EU, whether it'll be proper control of our borders, or the general EU mess. I don't think I used that word, because I said that the way, and then I can't quite remember the exact order in which I said this, but I did say, because I'm very concerned the way that the demographic trends are going, that by the time she's my age and I'm ready to pop off in 20 or 30 years, the demographic layout of this country could be very, very different from what it is. And she said, oh, well, when we get out of the EU, then we will have control of our borders. And I said, well, you know, there seems to be a lot of... these parliamentarians, obviously she has a lot of experience debating, and one thing that, although I did feel that I'd prepared myself as much as I could tell that she was deliberately trying to wrong foot me by moving to topics or angles which were away from, I think they call this pivoting. Of course, the point I was trying to make is that Europe is flooded with migrants and refugees, and they all are going to get many of them will get some kind of residency or EU status, so that if there's going to be freedom of movement after we have the proper Brexit, then, you know, part of this nonsense they're trying to impose on us, then they'll have access to Britain as well, of course. You know, even though, oh, well, it's only EU people, it's all just a backdoor thing, and you know, she's kind of moving me on, because I did, well, I said, look, what's happening in Europe with Islam, and she starts getting a little bit, oh, have you got something against Muslims? And I'm saying, well, you know, it does have an agenda to take over our countries. At which point, it's like, racist! So I say, no, Islam is not a race. And their demographic is growing. And she says, well, a British citizen can be, you know, a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim, but we all know where this is going, and I want to avoid being trapped in the kind of, basically, we see what this is going on. It's all race baiting, isn't it? It's like they want to goad you to the point where you make some kind of racial argument or racial slur about somebody, and I'm just saying, well, you know, I don't want to be under the caliphate, or at least I don't want to be under Islamic rule. And you can see that these MPs, I mean, she is kind of Blairite, I think, which is, you know, one of the worst options, I think, but they're all pretty bad on the left. And quite clearly, she's trying to provoke me, because in her mind, the world is one communist international, and everybody is entitled to come and move here, and that if the British people, the people whose ancestors built this country, have any objection to even controlling, you know, or any objection to the number of people coming in, that we should have any controls whatsoever, that we have to tolerate all forms of different belief, even if those beliefs are hostile to our culture, as Islam is, because it... Anyway, so I'm, you know... And so I can see she's really kind of getting warmed up here, but I'm trying to be very laid back, and, you know, I don't want to say the kind of provocative things that will automatically trigger her. I want to try and get in under the radar, to try and get her to see sense. Look, I'm saying to her, look, what kind of country will we have, you know, in 25 years' time, when I'm in my dotage, and when she's, you know, getting a bit older, she's no longer a bright young thing, you know, aspiring to cabinet status in the next Labour government, you know. She'll have, you know, her career behind her, and she'll be looking back, And that's what I'm saying, you know, is look at this. What will it be if we just continue to allow the increase of Islam and the demographic that comes with Islam? And there are other demographic groups as well, but this is the principal one we have to kind of worry about. And it's not like I'm saying these things out of the blue, because, right, 2016, right, I mean, I'm fascinated, really. I've seen so many people, so many of these liberals saying, oh, 2016, oh, the very worst year ever, Brexit and Trump, and I'm thinking, okay, forget about Brexit and Trump, right? Okay, just put that on the side for the moment. What's going on in the background? Countless terror attacks in Europe. People ploughing into crowds with trucks on more than one occasion. A priest serving Holy Communion has his throat slit. I mean, people attacked in the street with machetes. I've lost track of them, you know. Millennial woes who used to do video blogs for these things have stopped doing video blogs on individual terror attacks because they just take up too much time to do so many. So somehow, so this is the really devious kind of, you know, Fabian argument style. So somehow she manages to get Thomas Mayer mentioned in this, right? Hang on. I started out the conversation, the very beginning of the conversation, I started out by saying, I'm very concerned about the way that people who want to remain in the EU are vilifying people like me, and I don't raise these topics, but I have to defend myself when these topics come up in conversation. So she says, oh, well, the people, the 48%, the Remain people, they all feel the same way. And I said, well, you know, I don't attack them, but they attack me when they say it's like what happened at that party, not just that guy at the end of the party, but the moment I arrived there at lunchtime, house full of people, lots of wine, you know, vol au vents, everything, lovely, you know, sort of, you know, New Year's Day kind of event. Very first thing, I cram into the crowded hallway, and the very first thing is this lady who I've never seen before in my life says to me, oh, hello, crumbs, oh, well, I'm so glad, this very first thing she said to me, I'm so glad we've got 2017 here at last, because 2016 was so awful. And I'm going, oh, well, actually, yeah, oh, the trolley bus was great, wasn't it? Yeah, we ran the trolley bus. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I suppose so, but all the rest of it, I'm going, oh, yeah, okay, I think I better just keep my mouth shut here. But so this is, and then, you know, there were several other conversations where people basically just assume. They just assume. I'm sick and bloody tired of it. But this experience with my MP was actually far worse, because she managed to kind of introduce Thomas Mayer into the conversation, and I'm not even sure how it came in there. I suppose basically the fact that I'm talking about, you know, kind of vaguely national kind of identity thing. I mean, I definitely did not mention any other race or people other than the British. I think I'm allowed to refer to my own group, my own ethnicity, my own people. I otherwise only referred to Muslims and Europe, I think. I don't think I even mentioned the Middle East. And she's kind of basically, but this is the classic race baiting, isn't it? She says something about, oh, Thomas Mayer being a member of a, being a member of a terrorist organisation. Well, since I've come home, I've had a look, and I can't actually find any definitive. Some people say Britain First is a terrorist organisation, but I don't think it's actually been proscribed as a terrorist organisation. I can't find any data. Perhaps there is, I don't know. All I said was, now, first, hold back, in parentheses, just remember, Thomas Mayer had a long-term mental illness, and he was taking psychiatric medication the very day before he attacked Jo Cox. he had actually gone to a local health centre nearby where I believe he was a patient, or at least he tried to get treatment, and he said he was feeling bad, he needed help, and they put him off because there wasn't anybody available at the time, or the person behind the counter probably had poor social skills or something. I speculate. Certainly, if he had been given crisis intervention support the day before, it's fairly likely that none of this would have happened, right? So we have to remember, right, this is a mentally ill person on psychiatric medication, and some of these psychiatric medications can cause violent outbursts, they can cause suicidal ideation and self-harm, right? So he has been involved with some kind of, far right kind of thing, and but he also fits the classic stereotype of a loner. So you can't it's a bit difficult to be both of those. But anyway, so I'm really not quite, I'm really not quite sure of the status of Britain First. I mean, I'm no fan. I think they're probably some kind of arm's length set up by some black ops trying to just, set up some kind of trolling kind of organisation that is just totally ghastly, to put people off sensible, nationalist, identitarian concepts. It's the classic, agitation propaganda thing. You set up a straw man, everybody says, oh, nasty far right, oh, let's all stay in the EU, which of course fortunately didn't work, and there are people who have called into question the whole Joe Cox episode. I won't go into that here because it's a whole other thing, but I didn't raise it. This is the point. I did not raise it in the conversation. She managed to introduce it. I said, I made a slightly off the cuff remark, because she said, oh, we get people like Thomas Mayer and members of terrorist organisations. So I said, oh, I think that's a bit speculative. All I meant by that was that he is a mentally ill person who did seem to be kind of acting as a loner, and that's, so whoever these Britain First people are, they, if they put him up to it, then they were manipulating him, weren't they? Because he's mentally ill, right? Mentally ill people like that, particularly taking psychiatric medication, they're very easily manipulated by people who might throw them bones, throw them lifelines, throw them, give them some contact, isolated loner, mentally ill patient, psychiatric patient, a bit isolated, a bit lonely, has, kind of extreme fantasies, and then he gets picked up by this, it's classic, it's absolutely classic kind of, psyops. So anyway, I mean, obviously, I suppose I shouldn't expect Rachel Reeves, up-and-coming hopeful for the future leadership of the Labour Party in 10 years, to understand this. But, I mean, frankly, when you just say, oh, that's a bit speculative, I mean, her response was entirely speculative, because, I mean, any sane and sensible person surely would have at least said, what do you mean by that? And what I meant by it was that Thomas Mayer was a mentally ill person who, can't be used as an example for the rest of us. But this is, so we're back to where I started in the conversation. I'm saying, well, I don't raise these topics, but the moment they come up, people call us names. So I didn't raise the subject of Thomas Mayer. She raised the subject of Thomas Mayer, and I said something, and then she starts attacking me. So I managed to get at least 2 racists, and I think it was 2 xenophobes as well. Anyway, it was really interesting, because, I mean, this was, they really try to throw you off balance. I mean, basically, I never got a chance to say anything about the history of Islam. She said, what have you got against Muslims? And I said, well, it's Islam rather than Muslims, of course, perfectly decent, ordinary Muslims. It's the doctrine, it's the whole thing. It wants to take us out. But she wouldn't, if she hadn't been constantly badgering me, hectoring me, then I would have had a chance. I was feeling a bit slow today. You know, she doesn't know anything about me and my personal circumstances. She didn't know. I've just got over a bad flu, feeling a bit tired. Because this is classic liberal shouting down tactics. So I'm saying, well, you know, and then it's just kind of stopped showing me off before I'm just like, well, okay, yes, I have looked at some of the Quran, actually, and I never got a chance to say, well, 1,400 years of war against Europe, you know, 1,400 years of war against Europe, you know, Charles Martel, Gates of Vienna, you know, everybody knows this, do they? No, well, they should. So she gets up. I said, well, Thomas Mayer, that's a bit speculative, isn't it? I mean, you know, mentally insane person commits politically motivated murder, sure, you know, but I mean, I was just questioning the frame, the narrative that, you know, because I've worked in mental health, and I don't think that the actions of mentally ill people should be generalised to the entire population who might have one thing in common with them, you know, which is kind of what she seemed to be saying, you know, that, you know, or I'm merely saying that actually, you know, Thomas Mayer wasn't maybe actually fully, you know, criminally competent at the time because he was mentally ill and suffering from, you know, psychiatric medication and stuff. So she gets really triggered. She gets up. That's really racist and xenophobe. And I'm like, what? I'm sort of sitting there, and she gets up and said, I have to ask you to leave now. And I said, well, I just want to look. I'm just really concerned about the future of our country and where all this is going. You know. So I'm going to. So she's behind me now. I'm sitting in the chair. She's got up. She's gone behind me. She's opening the door. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And I'm going, well, I'm just trying to have a conversation with you here, please. I'm not having this racist xenophobe. I did manage to get in at one point. This is probably the most important thing I said at the whole session, was that I said, when she said that's racist and xenophobic, I said, that is such a cliche. It's completely meaningless. You know, you need to deal with the issues. And I think that triggered her. I think that was probably what actually raised the ante. If I'd kind of backed off and, you know, don't mean to offend you, no, but no, look, we're just sick and tired of this. Hasn't she learned from the, you know, the Deplorables episode? You know, you call people these names. If they crumble, they crumble. If they don't crumble, they're twice as strong. And I was certainly, gosh, I mean, it was barely, I think it was 10.5 minutes or something like that. My adrenaline was extremely aroused after that. I felt like I'd been kind of, you know, kicked around, actually. But I think it's really, really important to stand up to these people, because basically she's the kind of person who thinks that, well, you know, anybody can come to this country and they can be, you know, and they can be British, and you're a racist and a xenophobe if you're not willing, if you even think, this is the point, I didn't say anything to her other than just, I'm very concerned about the demographics for the future. I'm very concerned about the rise of Islam, the increased number of terrorist attacks in Europe. These are all surely legitimate concerns. You know, I'm getting a bit older now, I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't want to, you know, live in a world where everything I knew when I grew up with is being replaced by cultures and politics and people who are just forcing themselves on us. I mean, I never got a chance to talk about Roy Hattersley. I'll talk about that in another time. Anyway, I see we're coming up pretty close to the half hour now, so I'd better wind up. I hadn't really intended to kind of, you know, talk about this for so long, and I will definitely come back to this one. All I would say really is that go to your MPs and tell them things like this, because I think that clearly the reason why my MP Rachel Reeves of Leeds West, who meets constituents, if you're a constituent, I would recommend. If you're not a constituent, well, sorry, you'll have to go and see your own MP, because you can't come and see her. But if you are a constituent of Leeds West, she does hold constituency surgeries in Armley Town Street Library, Stocks Hill, on the corner of Armley Library, and you can book an appointment to see her at... I'll put the phone number at the bottom underneath. I don't think I have it right here. Go and see your MPs and challenge them. And obviously you will be likely to get these kind of responses. I mean, it is a bit unpleasant. But we're not going to get through these things without a little bit of unpleasantness, unfortunately. And if the only unpleasantness we have is a bit of abuse from our MPs, then that is a lot better than having it go to much worse things. We do not want worse things to happen. We want people to realise that it's time to have a more sensible attitude to at least preserving our dominant culture. That's really kind of the bottom line. I mean, there's many different angles to this whole kind of nationalist identitarian thing, but you know, I would say, for me at least, the bottom line, or rather the what should I say, the line under which we cannot allow ourselves to be pushed, is maintenance of the traditional British population as the dominant hegemonic population of this country. And then we can live with enclaves, a certain amount of assimilation and so forth, but those have to accept that it is our country, and that, you know, it's just pathetic when these people, you're saying, look, I'm really worried about being taken over by Islam. You're a racist and a xenophobe! Oh God, really? I mean, has it really come to that? You know, I mean, oh God, you know, Europe used to be Christian, and we have some pagan roots, you know, but all that would be swept away. But anyway, so I think I better wind up here. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, please like and share it with your friends. I'm going to be saying more about this. 2017 does seem to be ramping up already, at least in my own personal experience. The people who are trying to take it away from us are getting very upset, and they're getting very angry, and they're getting very worried, because the more 2017 goes along, I mean, as my MP admitted, Brexit will go through, and I kind of realise now that she didn't like it. She didn't like having to admit it. She didn't like all that. So, thank you for watching, and Chardonnay, my brothers and sisters. We will prevail. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Hello everybody, I'm Claire, and welcome to my video blog. Right, well, I think I'll just go straight into this one, because I've just had what, when I was young, back in the 70s, we used to call a really heavy scene. And in fact, I had a bit of a heavy scene on New Year's Day, so I'll just warm you up with that one. But the one I had this afternoon was considerably heavier. And, yeah, I'm kind of getting a bit annoyed with these people now. The one on New Year's Day, I went to an all-day house party. Very pleasant. And knew lots of people there. Usual arrangements, don't we? Anyway, the relative of the hosts came in and picked up on the conversation, and it was really quite unpleasant. I mean, you really don't expect on a kind of good-natured New Year's Day house party for people to be getting aggressive with you. I don't mind people saying, oh, well, you know, I was a bit disappointed, you know, and blah, blah, blah. But when they start on you, like, really, you know, if we're lucky, Parliament will turn this nonsense over and we'll still be in the EU. Oh, hang on, just a minute. Hang on. Excuse me. Oh, Parliament is sovereign, it can... that annoyed me a bit. I was going to do something, I was going to do a video blog about that. But anyway, we've got it over in 3 minutes flat, because today I had a much, much heavier scene, and it lasted a much shorter space of time, actually. I had mentioned to some of my friends that I would be going to see my MP, Rachel Reeves, Leeds West. Today I wanted to speak to her about Brexit, and I also wanted to tack a few other subjects along with it, which went in its train. And so I had to get in his face a little bit, because I was just about to leave. I thought, I just can't sit here and take this nonsense from this guy, and he's a relative. It's on home turf. There's nothing I can do about it. He's late. The party's thinning out. Time for me to go home. So I got up and left. And just as I was leaving, he made some smart aleck remark at me. So I came back right in his face. I said, look, mate, you can have your opinion. I don't mind. And I'll have my opinion. But you don't snidey remark people as they're leaving the room so that you can have the last laugh that you've dug at me, because really, of course, this is somebody who's a bit of a sore loser. Now anyway, so, really just towards the end, I should have left. I only had one glass of wine, and that was really early on, so that had worn off. But I should have left before a relative of the hosts sat down, and I was already talking to a quite interesting Irish chap who had engaged me, and he had drawn me into talking about Brexit, but it was, quite friendly, and in fact it turned out he had voted Brexit himself, because I don't know how this works, but he had voting rights here with it, so okay. I know that Ireland and Britain have kind of interesting constitutions.